I found out I was adopted on my 18th birthday, but then I met my real mother. And she said I was a mistake. I always thought I knew who I was. Growing up in a quiet neighborhood just outside of Minneapolis, I had what most would call a normal life. My parents, David and Linda, were middle class, church going people who packed my school lunches, attended every parent teacher conference, and tucked me in with bedtime stories even when I was a teenager and too embarrassed to admit I still liked it. We weren't rich, but we had each other. That was enough. Or at least, I thought it was. Looking back now, there were signs, strange little moments that didn't make sense at the time. Like how we had almost no baby pictures of me, just a few blurry shots starting around age 2. Or how mom would sometimes pause when someone asked who I looked like, then quickly say, "She's got her own look, our little original." I always brushed it off. I didn't need to look like anyone to feel like I belonged. David taught me how to ride a bike. Linda stayed up with me all night when I had the flu in 6th grade. They were my parents. Period. But everything changed on my 18th birthday. It started with a cake. Chocolate fudge with white frosting, my favorite, and the words "Happy 18th, Natalie," piped in shaky red letters. David handed me a small, rectangular envelope right after we cut the slices. "This isn't a present," he said, shifting awkwardly in his chair. "It's something we should have told you long ago. But we were waiting for the right time." The right time felt more like a punch to the stomach. Inside the envelope was a letter. Official. Stamped. An adoption certificate. My name was printed clearly, Natalie Marie Thorne, with my birth date. And 2 different names listed as biological parents. Neither was David. Neither was Linda. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. The silence in the room was suffocating. I felt like the walls were closing in. David was the first to speak. "We adopted you when you were just a few months old. Your biological mother was young, a teenager, and the situation was complicated. We wanted to tell you earlier, but we were afraid it would make you feel different." I stood up and walked out. Not because I hated them, but because in that moment, I didn't know who I was anymore. Every memory I'd built my identity on, every hug, every bedtime story, every Christmas morning, suddenly felt like it belonged to someone else. I sat in my car in the driveway for nearly an hour, just staring at the steering wheel, trying to breathe through the storm inside me. My hands were shaking. My mind was racing. I was adopted. Not born into this life. Given to it. And my birth mother, a complete stranger, was out there somewhere. I couldn't sleep that night. I stared at the ceiling and wondered if she ever thought of me. Did she feel guilty? Regretful? Or had she just moved on? By the next morning, curiosity overpowered fear. I asked David and Linda if they knew anything more. They exchanged that look, the one parents use when they're deciding whether or not to drop another bomb. Linda finally opened the drawer in her desk and pulled out a file folder. Inside were faded documents, a few legal letters, and a single photograph, black and white, grainy. A girl, maybe 16. Skinny arms, eyes that looked hollow, like someone who had already seen too much of life too soon. "This was taken the day you were placed into care," Linda said quietly. "Her name was Allison Cross." Allison. My birth mother. According to the papers, she had signed over her parental rights without contest. No fight. No letters. Just a name on a line and a sealed file. There was no mention of a father. The adoption had been closed, no contact permitted, no information exchanged beyond the basics. But Linda had kept that one photo. "In case you ever wanted it," she said. I stared at the image for hours, trying to imagine her voice, her laugh, what it must have felt like for her to hand over a baby and walk away. Did she cry? Or did she feel relieved? There was only one way to find out. I began the search quietly. I didn't want David and Linda to feel like they were being replaced. Deep down, I still loved them. But I needed answers. At first, it was dead ends. The name was common enough, Allison Cross, and most of the records were sealed or incomplete. I joined adoption forums, reached out to search angels, and even paid for a background check that led nowhere. It was frustrating. like trying to put together a puzzle with half the pieces missing. Then, 2 months later, I got a message on one of the forums I joined. A woman named Erica had been searching for her half-sister, someone her mom had given up in her teens. She had stumbled across my post, and something clicked. We exchanged emails, photos, timelines. Everything matched. Erica was 2 years younger than me. Her mother's name? Allison Cross. My hands trembled as I typed back. Do you think your mom would ever want to meet me? Erica responded quickly. I'll ask. But just so you know, she doesn't really talk about that time. And she can be cold. Don't take it personally. Cold? I didn't know what that meant, but I was too desperate to care. A week later, Erica wrote again. She agreed. One meeting. Her conditions. I didn't ask what the conditions were. I just said yes. We arranged to meet at a diner halfway between my college and the small town in Iowa where Allison now lived. Erica came with her, but stayed in the car. I saw them pull up before they entered, Allison stepping out tall, composed, wearing dark sunglasses and a coat that looked expensive but understated. Like she didn't want to draw attention, but also didn't want to be ignored. I stood as she entered, heart pounding, mouth dry. She stopped in front of the table and looked at me, really looked. Her eyes, my eyes, narrowed slightly. You're taller than I expected, she said flatly. That was the first thing my birth mother ever said to me. I sat down, unsure whether to smile or cry. She didn't hug me, didn't offer her hand. Just ordered black coffee and stared like I was an obligation she had to get through. I tried to start gently. I've wanted to meet you for a long time. She nodded, took a sip of coffee. Silence. You were young when you had me, I continued. I get that. I don't blame you. I always wondered if you thought about me. That's when she sighed. Loud, dramatic, like I'd asked her to lift a piano. And then she said it. The sentence that would slice open everything I thought I was prepared for. Of course I thought about you. Every mistake leaves a scar. She stared at me as she said it. No remorse. No softness. Just blunt truth. You were a mistake, Natalie. One I corrected the day I gave you away. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. She wasn't saying it to be cruel. That would have made it easier to hate her. She was saying it like someone commenting on the weather. Indifferent. Final. I sat there, hands clenched in my lap, trying to keep my face from cracking. I'm not here to bond, she continued. Erica insisted I come. She's got this fantasy that you and I could be sisters or some crap. But I moved on. I had a life. A family. That chapter's closed. I managed to whisper, why did you even agree to meet? She looked down at her coffee, then shrugged. Closure. Closure. That word felt like poison in my throat. She got up, dropped a 20 on the table, and walked out without another word. Just like that, she was gone. Back in the parking lot, Erica hugged me tightly, apologized. Said, she's always been like that. Guarded. She just doesn't know how to handle guilt. But it didn't feel like guilt. It felt like rejection. Complete, final, cold rejection. I went home that night and stared at the same ceiling I had months ago, only this time, the storm inside wasn't confusion. It was fury. Not because I was adopted. Not because I was unwanted. But because she made me feel like I was nothing when all I'd ever wanted was to understand where I came from. That night, something inside me shifted. I wasn't looking for her love anymore. I wanted something else. I wanted the truth. I wanted answers. And maybe, deep down, I wanted her to regret ever thinking I was a mistake. After that meeting, I shut down emotionally for a while. I didn't answer Erica's messages. I stopped bringing up my adoption to anyone. I even avoided David and Linda, afraid they might ask how it went, afraid I'd explode if they said anything kind. Because kindness felt unbearable now, like I didn't deserve it. But I wasn't numb. Not really. Beneath the silence, something was burning. I kept replaying those words over and over. You were a mistake. One I corrected the day I gave you away. Closure. Closure? For her maybe. But for me, all she did was tear open a wound that never had the chance to heal. And still, some part of me couldn't let it go. I needed to understand why she hated me so much. Why she felt nothing. Why she looked at her own daughter like an inconvenience. So I did what I do best. I researched. Late into the nights, I dug into court records, social media archives, genealogy databases, anything that could fill in the blanks Allison Cross refused to give me. And what I found wasn't just painful. It was unforgivable. It started with something small. A newspaper clipping from 2004, the year I was born. It mentioned a 17-year-old girl involved in a family custody dispute after a troubled pregnancy. That girl's name? Allison Marie Cross. The article was vague, likely to protect the minor involved, but it referenced ongoing legal petitions filed by the maternal grandparents and a local church's youth counselor named Peter Martin. I traced that name. Peter Martin had worked at several church programs over the years, some connected to teen parenting shelters. He passed away in 2016, but I found old newsletters and community bulletins with his writings. In one, he mentioned a young girl I counseled who chose adoption over abortion after a tense battle with her parents. That phrase, battle with her parents, stuck with me. I dug deeper. A search of local probate filings led me to a will belonging to Clara Cross, Allison's mother, who had passed a few years earlier. The will listed a grandchild, Natalie Marie, unnamed in her care but mentioned as the child my daughter abandoned and refused to acknowledge. What? That was me. My name, buried in a legal document next to the word abandoned. Clara had tried to get custody of me when I was born. And Allison had refused. I felt sick. There had been someone who wanted me. Someone who fought for me. And she shut it down. I drove to the old address listed in the will, a weathered yellow house on a quiet street in Iowa. A new family lived there now, but the woman at the door remembered Clara. She was kind, she said. Very private. But I remember she used to talk about her grandbaby. Said she wished she could have raised her. I left shaking. The story was starting to shift in my head. Maybe Allison hadn't just made a hard decision as a scared teen. Maybe she robbed her own mother of the chance to raise me, not out of necessity, but out of spite. I needed more. So I messaged Erica. I told her everything I'd found. She didn't reply for 2 days. When she finally did, her message was short. You should come visit. There's more you need to see, but don't tell Mom. 2 days later, I took a bus to Erica's town. We met at a local coffee shop. She looked nervous, almost guilty. I didn't know, she said quietly. She always told me you were the result of some terrible mistakes she made when she was a teenager. I asked her what kind of mistake. She said it was a one-night thing, something she never wanted to talk about. Then she handed me a worn notebook. It was Clara's. Her grandmother's. Found in a box in the attic after she died. And in that notebook was everything. Clara wrote in first person, diary-style entries, pouring her heart into the pages. She wouldn't even hold the baby. Just stared at the wall like nothing existed. I begged her, please. Just look. Just one look. But she said she'd rather forget. They offered to let me raise her. I had the resources, the time. But Allison refused. Said it would be too embarrassing, too much like carrying around a sin for the world to see. I wanted to scream. That child was not a sin. That child was a miracle. When the papers were signed, Allison smiled. I'll never forgive her for that. I couldn't breathe as I turned the pages. Allison hadn't been pressured. She hadn't been forced. She made the decision because she didn't want the shame. And worse, she'd gone out of her way to block her own mother, my grandmother, from saving me. I felt my heart turning to stone. How could someone be so cold? I went to Erica's house that night, and for the first time, she let me see old photo albums. Ones Allison had kept hidden. There was one photo in particular that broke me. It was taken at a party, a teenage Allison, arms around her boyfriend. Both of them grinning. On the back, scrawled in childish ink. Baby due July 6th. Not ready. But who cares? We'll be legends. The boy? I recognized him from another document I'd pulled. A juvenile arrest record. He was 17. She was 16. He disappeared from public records a few months after I was born. According to Erica, he died in a motorcycle accident when she was still a toddler. So that's why Allison hated me. I was the last piece of that memory. A ghost of a boy she'd loved and lost. But instead of grieving him, she erased me. And the betrayal didn't stop there. Back in my town, I returned to my parents, David and Linda, still shaken by what I'd learned. I wanted comfort. I needed it. But something about their reaction to the news was odd. Too quiet. Too controlled. Finally, Linda broke. We knew. I froze. What? She looked down, wringing her hands. Your grandmother, Clara. She contacted us when you were 6. She wrote letters. Asked if we'd let her meet you. Said she just wanted to know you were safe. David stepped in. We never responded. We didn't want to confuse you. You were our daughter. We were afraid if we opened that door, we might lose you. My head spun. You kept her from me? The one person who actually wanted me? Linda had tears in her eyes. We thought we were protecting you. I didn't yell. I couldn't. I just left. That night, I went to a motel, turned off my phone, and sat with everything. All the lies. The omissions. The secrets. I had been unwanted by one mother, hidden from another, and lied to by the ones who claimed to love me most. That was when the grief ended. And the rage began. I knew what I had to do. Not for revenge. Not at first. But for truth. For justice. For me. And maybe along the way, I'd make Allison Cross feel even a fraction of what she made me feel that day in the diner. Because I wasn't a mistake. And it was time the world, especially she, knew exactly who I was. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I wasn't crying anymore. The tears had dried up somewhere between the truth about Clara and the cowardice of my adoptive parents. No. This was something else now. I felt like I was outside my body, floating, watching myself move through the world like a shadow. I went through the motions of college classes, part-time shifts at the bookstore, and dinners with my parents where no one said what they were really thinking. It wasn't numbness. It was clarity. And in that clarity, one question burned in my mind. Who decides what someone's worth is? Allison? For giving me away like garbage? David and Linda? For hiding the one person who actually wanted to know me? The state? For sealing files and calling it protection? No. I would decide. And I would show them all. I started by reclaiming the narrative, piece by piece. Clara's diary wasn't just heartbreaking. It was a legacy. She wrote about me like I mattered. Like I was precious. I scanned every page, organized them chronologically, and began typing them up, one entry at a time. I wanted her words to live forever. Next, I created a private blog. Just for me at first. I called it The Forgotten Granddaughter. It felt right. I uploaded each entry from Clara's journal, adding footnotes about what I had learned, what I remembered, what I felt. I wrote about the photo of Allison smiling at her party. I wrote about the sealed adoption file. I wrote about being called a mistake. It was raw, messy, honest. And then I did something terrifying. I made the blog public. I didn't expect anyone to find it. But within a week, a few readers stumbled across it, adoptees, former foster kids, even a few birth parents. The comments began pouring in. This made me cry. I'm adopted too. I've always wanted to know the truth. Your grandmother sounds like a beautiful soul. I'm so sorry she was kept from you. My birth mother also said I was a mistake. I felt so alone until now. The community I never knew I needed found me. And with their support, I started rebuilding. Meanwhile, I kept gathering information. I dug deeper into Allison's life, not to stalk, but to understand. She was now a successful realtor in Cedar Falls, Iowa. She had a husband, a house, a squeaky clean social media profile full of beach vacations and blessed captions. You'd never know she'd given up a child. You'd never guess she told that child. You were a mistake. It felt like erasure. Like she got to live consequence-free while I'd spent years wondering why I always felt like I didn't belong. But I also found something she didn't expect anyone to uncover. A video. It was buried on an old church Facebook page, a Women of Faith testimonial from 6 years ago. Allison sat on a stage in a modest dress, hands folded, looking so humble it made me want to throw up. She told the crowd, "I made some mistakes when I was young, but through God's grace, I was redeemed. I gave up my child not because I didn't love her, but because I did. It was the hardest choice I ever made. I prayed over it. I cried over it. And I still pray for her every day." She ended with a soft smile. Fake. I stared at the screen, blood boiling. She lied. She didn't cry. She didn't pray. She didn't even look at me the day I was born. Her own mother said so. And now, she was using my story to make herself look holy. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I didn't want to humiliate her. Not at first. But I did want the truth to be seen. So I wrote a response post on the blog. I embedded the video, then transcribed Claire's entries that contradicted every single word. I didn't name Allison directly, but the details were clear. Anyone who knew her would connect the dots. That post went viral. By the end of the week, I had 400,000 views and interview requests from adoption advocates, parenting podcasts, even local newspapers. Suddenly, I wasn't invisible anymore. I got a text from Erica late one night. She knows. I didn't ask how she found out. It didn't matter. Allison probably Googled herself and saw the whole thing unraveling. Her lies, her version of the truth, her saintly persona, all collapsing in real time. Then the email came. Short, sharp, cold. Subject: cease and desist. From Allison Cross. Natalie, take down the blog. You are defaming me and slandering my reputation. I have contacted a lawyer. You are clearly unstable, and I want no further contact with you. This is your final warning. I laughed out loud. Unstable? I'd spent 18 years wondering why I felt out of place, and now I knew. Because I came from her. A woman who lied about loving me, then threatened to sue when the truth came out. I didn't respond. Instead, I posted the email, removing her name, of course, under the headline. This is what happens when the truth gets too real. My followers doubled overnight. But then, something unexpected happened. An old neighbor of Allison's messaged me. She said she used to babysit Erica and remembered when I was born. She told me that Clara had once written letters, dozens of them, and tried to mail them to my adoptive parents. But when they never replied, she kept copies. She still had some. I asked her if she could send me one. When it arrived, I sat on my bed, tearing open the fragile envelope like it was sacred. Inside was a letter addressed to me. My dearest Natalie, I hope one day you read this. I don't know if your new parents will ever share it with you, but I had to try. I want you to know that from the moment I saw you, tiny, pink, crying, I loved you more than I thought was possible. You are not a mistake. You are my granddaughter. You were born from pain, yes, but you are not pain. You are light. I only wish I could have watched you grow. If this letter finds you, please forgive me for not fighting harder. I did try. But some doors were slammed in my face. I will always be waiting, in spirit or otherwise, should you ever want to find me. Love always. Grandma Clara. I cried for hours. This woman had never met me, but she saw me more clearly than anyone ever had. I wasn't a burden. I was someone worth loving. That changed everything. I was no longer driven by pain. Now I was driven by purpose. I knew what my revenge would be, not screaming or lawsuits or drama. Legacy. I decided to turn the Forgotten Granddaughter into a nonprofit initiative, a platform for other adoptees to share their stories. I found a mentor who helped me register it legally. I pitched it to a few small donors. A local journalist ran a feature on it calling it a voice for the children erased by silence. Within a year, we had over 1,000 contributors, a podcast, a small grant. And me? I was applying to grad school for social work. Because if I couldn't change my past, I would damn sure change someone else's future. Allison emailed again, this time softer. I never expected this to spiral the way it did. I made mistakes. But dragging my name through the internet isn't justice. It's vengeance. This time, I did reply. No justice would have been letting Clara raise me. Justice would have been not lying on stage. Justice would have been not calling me a mistake to my face. I added, but you're right about one thing. This is vengeance. And it's just getting started. I used to think revenge meant fire and fury. Screaming confrontations. Legal threats. Headlines. But I learned something far more powerful. Revenge is truth, delivered publicly, patiently, and without mercy. By the time Allison emailed me that second time, the damage was already done. But it wasn't damage to me, it was liberation. It was her mask that was crumbling. Her life, the one she'd carefully curated online, the inspirational mother, the God-fearing woman, the mentor to young mothers, was paper thin. All I had to do was let the world see the real story. And let her destroy herself trying to keep it buried. It started with the speaking invitation. A small liberal arts college in Michigan, known for its women's studies program, reached out. They had seen the viral blog and podcast, now named The Unspoken Bloodline, and wanted me to speak on narrative ownership and post-adoption identity. I flew out that October. Nervous, excited, terrified. There were about 300 people in the auditorium. I told my story, start to finish, everything. The birthday revelation. The diner. The notebook. The light-filled church video. I ended with one line. If someone calls you a mistake, let them watch you become the one thing they'll never be, unforgettable. The standing ovation hit like a wave. And the next day, something happened that shifted everything into motion. A young woman, maybe in her early 20s, approached me after the talk. She was quiet, shy, holding a folder. I think my mom knows your birth mother, she said. I recognized the name. Allison Cross. My mom said she used to run a teen mom support group with her. But they stopped talking after a disagreement. My stomach dropped. What kind of disagreement? She looked down. She said Allison had tried to convince a young girl to give up her baby, even when the girl had a stable family willing to help. My mom called it cruel. They argued. Never spoke again. There it was. Proof that Clara hadn't been exaggerating, and Allison had a pattern. I followed up. Tracked down the girl she tried to influence, now a grown woman named Jessica. Turns out, she kept everything. Emails. Recordings. Flyers. One email in particular stood out. Allison had written, "Adoption is redemption, and shame should not be worn as jewelry. If your family insists on raising this baby, they are enabling the sin. Close the door and heal yourself." I wanted to vomit. That wasn't guidance. That was control disguised as faith. Jessica agreed to come on my podcast. She told her story with grace, but didn't hold back. I kept my son, she said, despite her. And he's the best thing I've ever done. That episode exploded. Millions of views. And someone else was watching. A week later, I got a message from a journalist with The Guardian. They were doing a long-form investigative piece on adoption ethics, religious coercion, and the blurred lines between counseling and manipulation in church-led services. He'd read my blog, heard my podcast. He wanted to feature Allison, but through my lens. I gave him everything. Scans of Clara's notebook. The video of Allison's false testimony. Jessica's recordings. Photos of letters she never meant me to see. The article ran under the title, "Sanctified Silence. The Women Churches Tried to Erase." And right there in the center was Allison Cross. Face blurred, but name fully printed. It shattered her world. I know because Erica called me, crying. "She's getting death threats," she whispered. "People from church are cutting ties. Clients are backing out of home sales. She's spiraling." I stayed silent. "She's not eating. She's talking about moving. She says everyone's turned against her. That's when I said the most honest thing I've ever said. She turned on herself the day she called me a mistake. But I wasn't done. This wasn't about pain anymore. This was about reclamation. Taking back everything I was denied. So I made a bold choice. I applied for legal access to Clara's will. And under Iowa law, if you can prove familial connection, even as an adoptee, you can challenge exclusion if the original family intended to include you. And Clara had. Her words were clear. My granddaughter, Natalie Marie, though estranged, is the sole descendant of my heart. David and Linda were hesitant when they found out. Is this about money? They asked. I shook my head. No, it's about legacy. The court hearing was quiet, formal. But when I showed them the diary, the letters, the testimony, even the neighbor's confirmation, the judge ruled in my favor. Clara's remaining estate, small but meaningful, came to me. But more important, so did the house. The same yellow house Clara had lived in. The house where she wrote those letters. Where she dreamed I might one day walk through the door. And now, I had. I cried the day I signed the deed. Not because of victory, but because I finally felt claimed. With the inheritance, I turned that house into something new. The Clara Project, a nonprofit center offering support to adoptees, birth mothers, and estranged families seeking healing, not silence. It offered therapy grants, storytelling workshops, a library filled with real adoption narratives, unfiltered. People came from all over. Women, men, teens, grandparents. Some cried. Some screamed. Some just sat quietly, letting the truth breathe again after decades of being buried. It became my life's work. And Allison? She couldn't touch any of it. But she tried. She emailed again. You've taken everything. You win. Are you happy? I didn't respond. Instead, I sent her a package. Inside was a single photograph. A framed picture of Clara, holding a knitted baby blanket. And underneath it, a typed quote. I didn't give birth to her, but she was mine anyway. Even if she never knew it. I never heard from Allison again. Some people say revenge isn't healthy, that it's a poison. But here's what they don't understand. My revenge wasn't about making her hurt. It was about making her lies die. And in the place of her lies, I planted truth. Clara's truth. My truth. And no one, not Allison, not the system, not even silence, could take that away now. 6 months passed. The Clara Project was thriving. We just received our first national grant, enough to renovate the attic space and build out a media center where adoptees could record and archive their stories. I lived in the house now. Clara's house. My house. I'd kept her old chair by the window, the one where she probably wrote those aching letters to a granddaughter she was forbidden to love. Every morning, I sat there with my coffee, wrapped in a blanket she'd knitted decades ago, staring out at the world and wondering how one life could change so much. It was peace. Finally. But peace never lasts forever. One rainy Thursday, a manila envelope arrived in the mailbox. No return address. No name. Just my own printed neatly on the front. Natalie Marie Thorne. Inside was another letter. But not from Clara. Not from Allison. From him. I didn't even know he existed, not really. All I had from the past were fragments. A blurry photo from a party, his arm around Allison, and an old police record from a teenage fight. No one had ever told me who he really was. There was no name on my adoption papers. Allison had never mentioned him, not even once during our cold, bitter meeting. But this letter started with 3 words that sent chills down my spine. I'm your father. His name was Caleb Jensen. He wrote that he had only found out about me years after I was born. That Allison had told him she'd miscarried. That he'd believed her because, at 17, he wasn't ready to be a dad, and maybe deep down, he'd wanted to believe it. By the time he heard the truth, I had already been adopted, and Clara had died before he had the courage to reach out. I didn't know how to find you. I didn't even know if you'd want to be found. But then I saw the article in The Guardian. I saw your photo, your words, and I knew I had to write. He wasn't asking for forgiveness. He wasn't begging for connection. He just wanted me to know. You were never a mistake. You were stolen from people who would have loved you fiercely, me included. I didn't fight then, but I see you now. And I'm so proud. I read the letter 10 times that night. 10 different ways. Grief, awe, anger, confusion, disbelief. It all churned in me like a storm. He was alive. He knew about me. And Allison lied to him too. I wrote back. I didn't know what I would say until I started typing. I told him I didn't know how to feel. That I wasn't sure if I had space in my life for another parent, but I was open to letters, to honesty, to the truth. He replied a week later. And then again. And then again. And over time, I came to understand who he was. A man broken in his youth, manipulated by someone he trusted, and silenced by fear. But also, someone trying now. Someone who hadn't called me a mistake, even when it might have been easier. A month later, Caleb asked if we could meet. I said yes. We chose a neutral place, a bookstore cafe in Chicago. When I walked in, he was already there. He stood the second he saw me, eyes wide, hands shaking, and then he hugged me. The kind of hug that says everything words never could. I didn't cry. Not right away. But when I sat down and he pulled out a photo of Clara holding baby me, one I'd never seen before, the tears came fast. She gave this to me, he whispered. The day Allison moved out. She told me, one day she'll want to know she was loved. And that was when the final piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Clara had tried to build a family for me, even after the adoption. And Allison? She destroyed it out of pride. I asked Caleb if he'd ever confronted her. He looked away, jaw clenched. I did. Years ago. When I found out you were alive. I asked her why she lied to me. What did she say? She said she didn't want my guilt complex ruining her new life. That I had no claim to you. That it was better if you never knew about me. I stared at the table, heart pounding. She hadn't just denied me love. She had denied me truth. Over and over. Even when she met me at that diner, looked me in the eyes, she still chose to keep me in the dark. That wasn't indifference. That was cruelty. I thought I'd reached the end of this story. That the revenge, the reckoning, the healing, had all run their course. But life has a way of revealing one last truth. Just when you think you're finally standing on solid ground. It came in the form of a phone call. From Erica. Her voice was different this time, not defensive, not ashamed. Just hollow. She's sick, she said. Mom, it's bad. Pancreatic. The doctors aren't giving her much time. I said nothing. I'm not calling to ask for forgiveness, she continued. I just thought. You should know. In case there's anything you want to say, or not say. I stayed quiet for a long time. Then I whispered, I'll think about it. That night, I sat in Clara's chair. I imagined what she would say. Would she want me to go? To show compassion to the woman who'd stolen every moment she could have had with me? Would she want me to rise above? Or would she want me to stay far, far away, and protect the peace I'd finally earned? I didn't sleep. But in the morning, I knew. I didn't go to the hospital. But I sent Allison a letter. 1 page. No venom, no rage. Just this. You called me a mistake. You told lies about your past, about your love, about your decisions. You robbed your mother of a granddaughter. You robbed me of my identity. And still, I do not hate you. But I will not forgive you. Because forgiveness requires truth. And you never gave me that. Goodbye. I signed my name, sealed the envelope, and mailed it. She died 3 weeks later. Erica said she read the letter. And didn't say a word. I don't believe in happy endings. But I believe in earned peace. Today, I sit in the house built from broken promises, now a haven for others like me. I don't flinch when someone says adoption anymore. I don't cry when I think of birthdays or baby photos or missing chapters. Because now, I wrote my own. And when people ask me what I'd say to that 18-year-old girl opening that envelope on her birthday, I say, you're not a mistake. You're a beginning. And beginnings are always powerful.